the surrounding space as full of God. So here, this is what the Jewish Christian experience has passed on to us. And they've passed it on to us as an empirical reality. An empirical reality. And this is why the phrase, the kingdom of the heavens, came into use. And why the phrase, God of the heavens, came into use. Because this is where these people had experienced God. Immanence, that's the theological word for this, isn't something that we just read about in the Bible and therefore reason that, oh, it must be true of where we are. It is something that we know by experience and can know by experience. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sanctus Forum. I am Michael Stewart Robb, better known as Mike. I'm the director of the Sanctus Institute, which sponsors the Sanctus Forum, these YouTube things, podcast things, if you're listening. And there is a podcast if you've never known that. The Sanctus Institute is a European institute for theology and spiritual formation. It says it in the name. What we're aiming to do is encourage the European continent, the whole thing, in theology and spiritual formation, but we do it primarily through European churches and ministers. So if you are in one of those categories and want to stay connected with us, there is a website, not a great website, but a newsletter, not a terribly great newsletter, but a perfect way to stay in touch with us and to know what we're doing. So go on over to sanctus.institute to find out about that, or just subscribe to the YouTube channel and you'll hear a little bit about the sorts of things that we are interested in. Now, in this video, we're talking about Dallas Willard's The Divine Conspiracy, which you've probably already figured out, and we're talking about a section called The Kingdom of Heavens and the Kingdom of God. Now, Dallas is mainly trying to explain the term, the kingdom of the heavens. He just loves this term, and I think he sees such a beautiful richness behind this concept. And I just want to point out here, just you kind of have to look at the section before to sort of see where he's going with this. He talks about the surrounding space is full of God, and he talks about Matthew, which is the only book of the Bible where we find this term, the kingdom of the heavens. Matthew is the one that really sees that the kingdom of God has another way of being described as the kingdom of the heavens, because the word heavens, Dallas writes, captures the rich heritage of the Jewish experience of the nearness of God. And he even says this heritage is a primary revelation of the nature of God. So the God we're dealing with is a God who is there in space, is near. Perhaps not one who has to be near, but certainly not one who has chosen to be distant. And deism is kind of the word for that, this idea that there is a God, but he's fairly distant. That's kind of the general idea about God that is in Western culture, at least. This idea that, yes, there is God, there's sort of something out there, something higher, but not something that's all that close to us and what we are doing and active with us and willing to speak to us and willing to show himself to us. So that's what Dallas is sort of pushing back against. And right, he says here, this idea is so largely lost to the contemporary mind, right? So all these books that you read about the world, about cosmology, none of them have anything to say about the experience of God close to us. And Dallas thinks this is an empirical thing, something that you can seek and most likely find if you look for it in the right way. Now, in this section that he is dealing with today, he mainly wants to sort of point out that the kingdom of the heavens and the kingdom of God is not like just two different names. He wants to say that these are two different, very real descriptions for the same thing. And he uses C.H. Dodd, who's a sort of an old biblical interpreter, to sort of say what the general opinion is. The general opinion is that Matthew just sort of needed a different name for the kingdom of God because his Jewish audience just couldn't stand hearing that phrase used over and over and over, kingdom of God, kingdom of God, kingdom of God, because they had a respect for the divine name, and therefore he kind of finds a suitable alternative. And what Dallas wants to say is, no, it's actually not that simple. What he's doing here, that is Dallas, is he is using what's called in the theory of distinctions, a distinction of reason. Dallas's metaphysics classes, he would assign this book by Francisco Suarez, who is a late medieval metaphysician, on the various kinds of distinctions, and the whole class would have to read this. And he goes through 3 different categories of distinctions, and I won't go through them all now, but the distinction of reason has 2 kinds. And I won't even talk about the other kind, but there's this one called the distinction of reasoned reason. Now, the distinction of reasoned we use all the time. One of the classic examples of this is the morning star and the evening star. Now, you're astronomist? You're astronomist? The morning star and the evening star. Now, both of those terms refer to the same star. It's actually a planet. They're referring to Venus, usually Venus, perhaps Mars, but it's a star, a planet that appears both in the morning and in the evening. Now, those terms don't refer to it in the same way. They're referring, the one, obviously, to the fact that it appears in the morning, and the other, the fact that it appears in the evening. Another example is you can refer to that guy on YouTube whose hair is kind of Medusa-like and is in a different position every time he shows up on camera, or you can refer to the guy who is the husband of Katerina, Rob, my wife. So you're referring to the same person, but you're doing it in different ways and different meaningful ways. And so the idea here is that this kingdom is the kingdom of God. That's referring to who the kingdom is, but you also can refer to it as the kingdom in the heavens, and that's where it primarily manifests itself and where we primarily meet God. I don't know if any of you know this, but the organization Renovare works on this idea of there being 6 streams in the Christian tradition. 6 streams. Now, when Renovare started, it actually only had 5 streams, and the one that they added later was the sacramental stream, the incarnational stream. And this is the idea that God is present in all of life and in all of the things that we're doing, and he's very near to every single one of us, no matter what we're doing. Now, guess who suggested to Renovare that they should add a 6th stream? You guessed right, Dallas Willard. So when you look at that stuff from Renovare, and when you look at what Dallas Willard is saying in this, think very similar kinds of thoughts, okay? Maybe that's also a distinction of reasoned reason. I don't know. But that's what I've got for you today. Thanks for being here. Remember to subscribe to this channel as well as to the newsletter if you haven't already. We don't send a whole lot of stuff out. So, bye.